I'm not sure I'm qualified to say so, but I've got a strong suspicion that chunks of it are, yes. Is that fair?
How much of the chunks are stolen?
I don't know, but so your opening question was that, and I think I'm ceding that I think you have a point on the part of the Palestinians. Can I try and say what I think might be some positive things first, see if you disagree?
Please, go ahead.
Okay, number one. I'm a big fan of Daniel Schmattenberger. Daniel Schmattenberger says, when asked the question, what's one thing everybody could do to improve the world? He goes, take a small amount of time and really try and look at it from the other person's position. Learn to phrase their argument as well as they would, and try and empathize with how it feels to be them. Okay? I think that's good universal advice. I think at worst, if you do that 10 minutes a day, you've wasted 10 minutes, and at best, you may improve the situation. So that's one thing everybody could do. Okay?
I agree.
To represent where I personally am at, with my limited understanding of this, if I'd been in the ground on Saturday the 7th, I don't know what I would do, because I've never been in that situation. But I think what I should do is try and defend the settlers, and I would have tried to stand by them. I hope I behave well.
Well,
now, hang on, let me balance it. Okay? Equally, right now, if there are innocent Palestinians who are at the receiving end of that retaliation, I hope I would stand on the ground to protect them.
Well, why do you define?
Is that a reasonable? So I'm trying to side with the innocent people as individuals, more than put people into big tribal groups and then make blanket statements. That's why I think it's complicated.
I'm not trying to put people in tribal groups. I'm just talking about very clear moral terms that I think you, as a reasonable person, will agree to. Okay. That you can't define the settlers as neutral parties. They have settled illegally according to international law, even according, if you want to say, yeah, Israel is legitimate within the 1967 borders. Even if I conceded that, the settlers have gone way beyond those borders, and they've been condemned by international law. Israel doesn't care about international law. Those settlers are basically pushing Palestinians literally out of their homes at gunpoint, and so they're not neutral. So when you describe October 7th, you shouldn't describe it as an unprovoked attack.
I'm not.
You should
I'm not suggesting.
Fine, not you, Tony, okay. But others. The media, they want to present it as if Palestinians are just bloodthirsty and they have this terroristic attack against innocent settlers. These are not innocent settlers. They are literally stealing the land of Palestinians at gunpoint, subjecting Palestinians to all kinds of apartheid, ethnic cleansing, and things that all moral people of conscience, such as yourself, would agree is absolutely wrong. And that's what I want to get your agreement on, so we have a shared basis to discuss, other political matters. But if you can't agree that this is unconscionable, immoral, unjust, barbaric, ethnic cleansing, if we can't agree to those terms, then it's difficult to have a further conversation.
If I could respond to everything you said apart from ethnic cleansing, because I think ethnic cleansing is so emotive. In terms of justice, there's always an optimum ideal, an ethical ideal. I think the way the Palestinians have been treated falls significantly short of that ethical ideal. Yeah, I think
Palestinians have fallen. How have they fallen short?
Sorry, I didn't say that. I said the way they've been treated.
Sorry. Okay.
I believe that's the case.
I misheard.
I could be completely wrong, because you've got to study your facts. I may not know enough facts. There are other people here who will correct me on my assumptions, but I'm a layman. I'm trying to do the best I can. Okay. I think. Okay. Here's something. Hopefully, we can agree on. Upholding international law with uniformity for all people at all times is an aspiration that we could all aspire to. Yeah? So
as long as the international laws are just.
Okay, well, just international, but whatever the international laws are, at least they should be arbitrated and executed with uniformity for all people, irrespective of nation or faith. Is that reasonable?
Fair enough.
Okay, so from that positive point coming in, I'd say we're all collectively guilty to some extent, everybody, of not implementing that successfully, and hopefully we can see that if we had implemented it, it might have diffused some of the tension, because I believe...
How did Palestinians violate international law?
I think the specific Hamas people who just walked in and killed over 1,000 people, as far as I'm concerned, they acted...
They're fighting in a war of self-defense. Palestinians are defending themselves. And so, of course, there's going to be deaths, just like in any war. When you occupy a people's land and you're ethnically cleansing them, then how are you supposed to survive? You have to defend yourself. Gaza is an open-air prison. Palestinian children are being literally starved to death. And when they're not being starved to death, they're being bombed. How many hospitals has the IDF bombed.
I get it. What I'm aiming
No, if you get it, then you should acknowledge that Palestinians are not the ones who are violating international law and all standards of justice and morality. It's one side that's violating all standards of justice and morality. You should acknowledge that. Don't just retreat and say, oh, it's complicated. I think you're better than that, Tony. I think you can acknowledge that this is a clear-cut violation by one side and not the other. One side is the victim of a brutal occupation, a brutal system of ethnic cleansing. You see that, you know that, I know that you do. So just acknowledge it. You don't have to play both sides.
The fact that I'm not framing it the way you are, I think breaking things down into black and white, yes and no, good and bad, can be to oversimplify a problem. You want to get the idea, okay?
Show me who's bad. Show me how the Palestinians are bad.
Okay, I'll say a couple of things which is against Israeli supporters, just I think to keep common ground, so hopefully we can get constructive. Because I'm surprised we got this far. Actually, I really am. Okay.
I'm not surprised. You look like a reasonable man.
Thank you. Unfortunately,
can I say
as I've been transparent, everything I've seen about you gave me the impression that you were totally unreasonable. So
Who's
I'm pleasantly
responsible?
surprised we're talking.
And also, who's responsible
Fair
for
enough.
implementing international law? Because you made it sound like we're all responsible.
Yeah, this is what I was.
But I don't
say.
think we are, because
Okay, I think
isn't
in
it
this
not the Security Council's
Let me lob in
responsibility?
this idea. I think we've broken this thing that we've divided into people who are innocent and people who are guilty. And I think that black and white thing is not helping. We should be asking the question, on a scale of complicity, how guilty is any individual? And I think every individual should look in the mirror. This isn't limited to people in Palestine and Israel. The entire global community is in some way failed
Do you not
to
think it's
implement
more the
international law
Security
with
Council
equanimity, and we could all
and the
have done better.
governments?
Yeah? Can we agree on that?
Can you, for example, condemn the Nazis for the Holocaust, or is it
Yes,
morally
of course.
complicated? Why is that? Yes, of course, it's black and white when it comes to them, but when it comes to Palestinians, then it's complicated, it's gray, we can't make a moral judgment.
I'm not saying that because what I haven't. It's a matter of proportionality, okay? It's a matter of you're pointing out who's been substandard, even if, and I think you're right on balance that the Palestinians have had a bad deal, okay? I think that. I could
I'm
be
saying
wrong.
more than that.
Nonetheless, the key question, the ethical question is, what is a proportional response?
By who?
Now, I've heard some commentators, like Piers Morgan, I'm not a big fan, but he's plugged this question again and again and goes, what is a proportional response? That's what we need to identify.
For who to do a proportionate response?
I'll give you a couple of things.
But I'm trying to clarify what you mean by
proportional
who.
to everybody, because as far as I'm concerned, I want to be on the side of everybody. The species is my tribe. I'm not in any given group. And I think reality happens at the level of the individual, and the more you think in tribal mass terms, the easier it is to depersonalize it and lose track of the individual reality of pain and suffering, yeah?
Okay.
So you want to focus on that, and in reality that is happening to individual Israelis and individual Palestinians, and I want to empathize with them as much as I can, without just making out it's all 50-50 in the same, and ignoring the moral political quandaries you're pointing out, okay?
Is there any such thing as an innocent German in World War II? Were there any innocent Germans?
No, I don't think...
There were no innocent Germans? We're just caught up?
As I hope I just said, I don't think any human being is 100%. We're implicated and connected with each other. Everybody is culpable of being suboptimal.
So the Jews were culpable for the Holocaust? If everyone is culpable,
Look, I don't want to be the guy who's going...
You have a certain
hey,
standard for World War II?
I don't believe that. Okay, all I'm saying is we all make choices. We make some substandard choices, and terrible choices are made by the Nazis, no question. Okay, they are the most culpable people. You could argue.
So can we compare the actions of the Third Reich to the IDF and what the Israelis are doing to the Palestinians, starving them to death, bombing them, ethnically cleansing them, stealing their land, bulldozing them, literally running over them with tractors? We can't compare that to genocides?
I think you can make, if you want to make a comparison, I'll go on an edge and go there. But I think in terms of scale, I do think there is a clear difference. Well, there is...
Yeah, I can agree. I can agree that the scale could be different, but are they within the same category of genocide?
If you want to argue they are, hypothetically, let's accept that they might be in the same scale. Now, if we measure the severity, 6 million people in concentration camps with clear intent and gas is not a level of is a much higher level of malicious intent, I think, than confining people into an area and ignoring international law and potentially
starving them.
now the starvation. That hasn't been the ongoing policy prior to that, I don't think.
It has.
You said ethnic
95% of Gazans in Gaza don't have access to clean drinking water. They don't have access to medical supplies.
Now?
The few hospitals that they have been turned into rubble. That's the reality of Gazans.
The figure that I've heard, correct me if I'm wrong, I've heard this from Abbas, who said, do you know Abbas?
No.
Okay, he's a Muslim, it's very good.
Yes,
very
sir.
good. I think most people here respect Abbas to a fair extent. I've heard quoted is that between 2008 and 2020, 5,000 is just over 5,000 Palestinians were killed in the conflict and about 250 Israelis, which means you've got a ratio of 20 to 1. Yeah? I think that's a significant statistic and it should be on the table. Okay?
It's not,
and I
it's
don't
even
want
more.
I don't want to hide from that, but I would then draw on it and go, okay, I'm looking at 5,000 versus 6 million. I think you can see there's a quantitative difference there. Also,
that doesn't take into account the total amount of deaths by Palestinians who are malnourished. They don't have access to medical care. They cannot go to access medical care, even in the West Bank, because there are checkpoints that prohibit Palestinians from traveling. This is why former President Jimmy Carter calls it an apartheid state.
sure.
It is an apartheid state that was worse than what South Africa experienced.
I get it, but we were able to disentangle.
So what is the human toll of that? It's not just about
Okay, you know
civilians that are killed in armed conflict.
Okay, I'm not agreeing with the severity of your diagnosis, okay? I do agree that ethically, I think the Palestinians have had the short straw. That does not mean for 1 minute that I support what Hamas did, and as I've said, on that day, I'd be on the ground helping to defend those people, okay? Because
Helping to defend Palestinians?
Helping to no.
Why?
Why?
You're
Because I'm
saying
empathizing-
you're
because
this
I'm
close to acknowledging that the Palestinians are being ethnically
No,
cleansed, but you still want to defend the
No.
ethnic cleansers?
Okay, no,
The settlers? That's what the settlers are
I haven't
doing.
reached the point where I'm agreeing with the level of ethnic cleansing which is comparable to the Holocaust. Number two,
You just agree with a little bit of ethnic cleansing.
No, I think
not
what-
6 million. Maybe a little bit lower number of ethnic cleansing is okay.
Okay.
That's how you sound,
I know,
my friend,
I'm
my
sorry.
friend Tony.
I'm
I
sorry.
just met you. I really like you, but this is how you sound. It sounds ridiculous.
Okay, I don't want to sound like that because it's not right, man. Let's go from foundational assumptions. Nia, intent in the Quran. I'm all about intent. Okay? I think it's always intent. And I could be wrong, but I think the level of malicious intent that was intrinsic in the Holocaust was significantly, and I mean significantly greater than the level of malicious intent which has been happening with Palestine. That doesn't mean there hasn't been malicious intent. That doesn't mean there hasn't been injustice. That doesn't mean that international law hasn't been flaunted, etc. But I can still engage with a lot of empathy, which I think the Quran as well would prescribe, attempting to empathize with the individuals on the ground who are unnecessarily being taken down and suffering and dying when it's avoidable and we could do better. And I think we're all obliged to aim for the best solution possible.
Now, there's a difference between a Palestinian whose land has been stolen, whose entire family has been wiped out, the rest of his family has been turned into refugees, and he's facing the death bombing of this terrorist state. There's a difference between that innocent Palestinian and an Israeli who is on that occupied land, is benefiting from the land of the Palestinians, and is living comfortably, and then has to face some kind of war situation. That's a war zone that has been created by Israel. It's been created by Israel, and it's been maintained by these Western powers like the US and the UN Security Council that have maintained this oppressive occupation. So you cannot make an equivalence between innocent Palestinians and those who are literally occupiers.
Okay, again.
Would you agree with that?
I didn't dispute the way you're drawing the moral lines. What I'm disputing is the proportionality of your response. And
what response? What is the response?
The fact that you seem that we should always aspire to.
Are you talking about 40 decapitated babies?
No.
That was proven to be a hoax?
Okay, I don't know that's proven.
How about the raped ravers that turned out to be a hoax?
I don't know that's a hoax.
What about all of these hoaxes that have been pushed by Israeli propaganda? How about the AI images from Ben Shapiro of the charred babies? It turned out to be a hoax, fake images.
Okay, apparently.
These are all hoaxes. Like, what is the grave moral crime that the Palestinians have committed? They've just defended themselves.
Can I respond?
Yes, please.
I thought when Mohammed Hijab debated Piers Morgan, to me the most interesting thing that I heard during that debate was when Piers Morgan fleetingly said, do you believe in a two-state solution? And Mohammed Hijab said, I'm paraphrasing, I'm not sure, it's complicated. And then the debate moved on. And that to me was the sweet spot for a deeper conversation, okay? Because Mohammed Hijab is normally a fairly adamant individual. And when I heard him concede that point, I thought, here's the terrain we should be opening up in terms of a discussion. I think being not sure is often quite wise. I'm not sure about beheaded babies, okay? I genuinely don't know. It could be either way. I'm not sure about the hospital. It could be either way. I'm not sure about a number of things. What concerns me is people who are sure, above and beyond what is objectively reasonable. And the fact that you sound like you're so sure makes me maybe appeal to you to double check your sites. Maybe the level of
can you at least
you're bringing to this.
Can you at least condemn Israel for bombing hospitals?
Well, yeah, of course. Hang on. Because it's about near and intent. Anybody who bombs a hospital and innocent people with intent, I clearly condemn. And by the same token, because I believe in the principle of self-consistency, I will also condemn people who I think disproportionately, Saturday the 7th was disproportionate. What was done to those people was disproportionate.
What was done to the people?
They were murdered.
Why? They're armed settlers.
There weren't causes.
How do you know that? How you said that we're unsure about this thing and that thing. Why don't you admit that you're unsure who was actually killed? How do you know that they weren't actually IDF soldiers?
Okay, you know what? In the interest of consistency, you're correct. I don't. Okay.
Then what's disproportionate about attacking these apartheid stormtroopers?
Can you not now steel man the position? Because I'm uncertain, I've now got to make a judgment as where do I think I should let the benefit of the doubt lie. So because I'm unsure if they were all IDF psychopaths, I think ethically I should give the benefit of the doubt to the notion that they probably weren't, particularly the 2- and 3-year-old kids. What do you think? Yeah.
Where's the evidence that 2- or 3-year-old kids were deliberately targeted?
I didn't say deliberately targeted, but consequentially, and I'm not a consequentialist, I'm a deontologist, but consequentially it does seem that there are dead kids. And I don't think they were active malicious members of the IDF.
I mean, why can't you blame the settlers for bringing their children into a war zone, literally kicking Palestinians out of their homes and putting their children in the cribs of Palestinians? Can you condemn that?
Yeah.
Okay, great.
But it's about, hang on, if that's true, because I'm not sure I know my facts, but in terms of context, you want to be doing a couple of things. Yeah, point the finger and blame, because that's necessary. You've got to judge people on their choices. But at the same time, you should also be trying to empathize and look at the steel man position, okay? And when I don't hear people doing that, when they sound like they're certain about something, when they just want to point the finger, and when they don't want to try and empathize with the opposing position, I think psychologically and spiritually they could do ethically a bit better, and everybody should be doing it. Now, with respect, this is way the most empathic I've ever seen. I'm genuinely impressed, because I've spent quite a few hours now watching you on YouTube videos, like Matt Dillahunty.
I was very empathetic to Matt Dillahunty.
Okay.
When he started accusing me of being a pedophile, what did I say?
Without going there, I would never have thought in a million years I could stand and have a conversation with you that will get to this point.
Okay.
And that fills me with some hope that maybe something I've said might impact with you a tiny bit and we can find more common ground. But I'd like to hear that you can empathise at least with the 2-year-olds and 3-year-old kids who died.
Yeah, of course, I empathize with any 2- or 3-year-old that is dragged by his or her Israeli parents to settle the stolen land of Palestinians. That 2- and 3-year-old doesn't deserve to be abused by Zionists, of course. It's a crime. It's a crime that Israel is perpetrating, that the Zionist settlers are perpetrating. Absolutely. The thing is that you're framing it as two innocent sides, and let's empathize with both.
I framed it as everybody on the planet Earth is culpable to some degree.
I'm not culpable of ethnic cleansing, and neither are you, Tony.
No. We are culpable of we could have done better by the State of Israel and Palestine collectively as an international community if we had enforced international law more diligently with more ubiquity.
No, we could have done better. We could have done better by not creating an Israeli state on someone else's land.
I agree.
And ethnically cleansing the people who are from that land, who are living on that land. That's how we could have done better. Why do you draw the line at 1967? Go back to 1945. We could have done better, right?
I do. If I went back to
okay, we agree.
No, we don't.
That was how we started. How we started the conversation. You asked me, how do we solve this situation in the Middle East? I said that the Zionist state needs to give back its stolen land. And now you agree with me that if we go back to 1945, the international community could have done better by not stealing that land. We're agreed, Tony.
Definitely. I can imagine Marshall said to Truman, if you put the state of Israel here, 50 years from now, trouble. Okay? I believe that's the case.
Sorry, I didn't.
Marshall said to Truman.
Yeah?
Yeah, I think. I'm saying a lot of things here, incidentally. My partner is Jewish, I should point out, okay? So she's already, okay, I'm going to get a lot of flack. So I'm trying to, this is on camera. So I'm trying to see a lot of points to you in the hope that I can bring you back.
You're a brave man, Tony.
Thank you.
You're a brave man.
On the question of proportionality. Yeah. Because my argument doesn't pivot on technically who was legally right or wrong or morally right or wrong. It pivots on proportionality. Once you're killing people, not just 2- and 3-year-old kids, I would argue, you're losing proportionality. You could do better. If I went back, so personally now, apologies to my partner, if I went back to 45, 48, and I was there then, I may well have looked at it rather differently. Okay?
Thank you. Okay. That's it.
At the beginning of this conversation, play the tape, I anchored it in the fact that I care about the living, not the dead. Those decisions,
so do I.
Right, those decisions made by people who are dead. Okay? Everybody in that part of the world has, through no choice or fault of their own, been born into those worlds. During the course of this conversation,
but we need to acknowledge the wrongs that have taken place.
Is
it not?
But then we have to do our best to proportionately redress them in a collective fashion, which is to everybody's advantage. Yeah, that should be the common
we can have a debate about how to address it, okay. But I think that we've reached a lot of common ground on the moral illegitimacy of the Zionist state that was created in 1945.
I think
you have acknowledged that was wrong. It could have been handled better. Okay. People should not have been made into refugees and ethnically cleansed off of their land in order to create the Zionist state of Israel. We agreed on that, Tony.
No, don't please.
We are.
I'm open to the possibility that that's a moderately accurate representation of reality. I'm a guy of limited knowledge or understanding, okay? I'll meet some people afterwards.
I disagree. I think you understand very well. You just don't want to say what's obvious to everyone.
No, what's obvious is there's fact, okay. There's the fact value and there's the fact taxes, there's facts and there's values, okay?
Yes.
Now, you establish your facts, and I think the job is to get as many facts on the table as possible dispassionately. Then you try and contextualize them in an optimum fashion in accordance with what you guys call your fitra, and I happen to hope that we've all got one, which means the moral compass, yeah?
Yes.
So we've got to acknowledge facts, pleasant and unpleasant, dispassionately, and then try and synthesize them into an output, okay?
Yes.
Now, I find it I cannot condone the blanket killing of 1,000 people as though they're just one person. There are a series of different individuals with different motives for being there that I don't know about. Maybe some of them were rampant IDF Nazis, I don't know. But I think in the presence of my ignorance...
It's a relevant fact, though.
It is a relevant fact, but what's also relevant is I'm not psychic and I don't know their near intent. And I've got to give the benefit of the doubt of innocence or proven guilty. And killing
so you have to extend that to the Palestinians as well?
Absolutely, I want totally...
You have to extend that to Hamas, then?
Yeah, no, because, okay, having been...
No, I won't push you on that, because the laws in this country don't allow us to say certain things.
I'll say
just a wink for the camera, Tony.
I'll say a couple of things that speak to your side and then something strongly which speaks against it. Okay?
Sure.
A couple of things that speak to your side of concession. I think the head of the Daily Wire said he doesn't want proportionality. Okay? Recently on YouTube, I think I saw him say that, and I was absolutely appalled. Anybody, as far as I'm concerned, who's losing sight of the goal of proportionality has crossed some ethical line. I think Douglas Murray, I saw, also say the same thing, and again, he's crossed a line.
Tony, it's more than that.
Okay, it may be. Hang on, now I've got to say the thing.
It's Israelis themselves in government.
Yeah,
in the military themselves,
it may be, but
not outsiders.
Let's keep the dialectic going in a swings and roundabouts way, okay? So those are two positives, sort of in the favour of your camp. I want to be clear where I stand on Hamas. As far as I'm concerned, Hamas are like mad dogs, okay? And I would be on the ground defending those people because I would give the benefit of the doubt to them. That although they may be the
Why? Why do you give the
I'm
benefit
I'm
of the doubt to
rationalising.
one side to the other?
Because if there's,
Is it because they're white?
okay, I'll tell you. Maybe it's just personal. If there's a fight,
That's not a good reason.
Okay, no, I'm
Just
trying
personal.
No, maybe that's all I've got. Maybe I'm useless. I don't know.
No, that's not good.
I'm
Tony,
being
you can't. I can't let you go off of that.
Insofar-
Why give one side the benefit of the doubt and not the other?
I'm just being honest. If there's a fight here between two people, I will instinctively side with whoever didn't throw the first punch.
Who threw the first punch?
Okay, but then what's the statute?
Who threw the first punch? That was the whole 1945. Who threw the first
No,
punch?
it's not the whole conversation because what the statute of limitations means, as I said.
There's a statute of limitations on genocide. Then why are you condemning the Nazis for the Holocaust? There's a statute of limitations.
What?
You're saying that there's a statute of limitations on who threw the first punch,
Yeah.
but you acknowledge that Israel threw the first punch. The Palestinians were the victims,
No,
correct?
I'm not acknowledging they did because they themselves are the result of like the Balfour Agreement. They got screwed around and the
What?
What?
The Palestinians screwed themselves over with the
I didn't
Balfour
say the Palestinians,
That-
the Israelis.
Okay,
The Israelis got
let's
screwed over by
clarify.
the British. The Israelis got screwed over by the British. The British handled.
There was no Israel. The British created the state of Israel.
We need a word that we can use to refer to those people. I chose to call them Israeli. What do you want to call them?
Jewish people.
I can't
Jewish
call them
people.
because Jewish people live everywhere in the world.
Zionists.
The people who live Zionists is
No,
an
but Israel is a
ideology. I don't
state
do
for
that.
all Jewish people
Jewish Zionists.
around the globe.
I just need pick any word you want that's vaguely accurate for the group of people who live on that real estate. Okay.
It was Palestinians. Then they were ethnically cleansed.
What am I supposed to call Israelis? I just need a word for Israelis.
Jewish Palestinians.
Yeah, the Zionists.
Jewish Palestinians.
The Zionists.
Jewish Palestinians. No, Zionism is an ideology I don't embrace.
The
I'm
people
actively
who
against it.
have embraced that ideology and stole the land.
Look, clearly, if you look at the state of Israel, there's massive inner turmoil. Not everybody is of one mind. There are people who are Zionists and people who are anti-Zionist. And I would hope you would support the people who are anti-Zionist.
Absolutely,
Okay,
100%.
Okay,
There are many
so-
anti-Zionist Jews. They're doing a great job.
Excellent. So my guess is it's just possible that within the 1,000+ people who got killed on Saturday the 7th, there may have been a few anti-Zionists as well. It really is possible, isn't
No,
it?
because
No?
anti-Zionists aren't settlers.
Okay.
Anti-Zionists don't go illegally and
So you're
settle
sure?
the land of Palestinians.
Is your 100% certainty?
Yes,
You're
I'm very
100%
certain. If you're truly anti-Zionist,
no-
you're not going to support settlements. You're not going to support being on those, like that rave party, for example, that supposedly Palestinian terrorists went and killed 260 innocent Israeli civilians.
Yeah.
This was in a military outpost. Many of the people there are confirmed to have been a part of the IDF. Maybe 100% of the people who were there were in the IDF. Is that a legitimate target
Am I wrong in saying
for a
the IDF
self-defense movement to target a military post that is occupying your land and subjecting your people to a genocide, to an ethnic cleansing? Can you fight back against that? Or you should just sit back and watch them dance and have a party while your children are starving to death? Give me moral clarity, Tony.
I'm attempting to give clarity, and I totally hear the emotive logic of what
You're
you're
compromised,
saying.
Tony. You're compromised.
No, no,
You're
no.
sleeping with the enemy.
Yeah, no.
Your wife is
You admitted
I'm not.
it. You admitted it.
I'm not. I hear the emotive logic of your point nonetheless.
Emotive
Ethically,
logic.
The emotive logic.
Or the logic.
But I think you need to have the emotive logic and the objectivity and the ethical aspiration to do the best, and I don't think you're reaching for the best. I don't think all of those 1,000 people were you can assume were as ethically guilty as you're saying they are. I think some of them may well have been anti-Zionists who were visiting Zionists. Some of them were kids. And either way, to be honest, are you the kind of person who would just blow away somebody who was helpless? I just think that behavior in and
I don't
of
think
itself-
Palestinians do that. I think Israel does that. Israel carpet bombs Gaza knowing that civilians, women and children are being blown away. They blockade Gaza to prevent medical supplies, knowing that children, the 2 and 3 year olds that are in Gaza, are being starved to death. They don't have medical supplies. Why can't you empathize, Tony,
I do
with them?
empathize. It's
It's
just-
not a
I'm
two-sides
noticing
issue.
your lack of
It's
empathy
not a
with-
two-sides
I
issue.
want universal empathy.
If you empathize with the criminal, that makes you a criminal.
No, I empathize with the criminal to the extent that I don't think they deserve execution. Israel will still exist.
No one is advocating genociding
You are.
Israel.
No, I
No,
didn't
no,
say
no.
genocide. I didn't say genocide. It's clear. I said execution. I think it was disproportionate.
It's
and
called
that's-
self-defense.
My argument is.
If someone comes trying to kill someone that you love,
In my
God
self-defense-
forbid, someone comes to try to kill someone that you love, God forbid, would you support the
Daniel.
execution of that person in self-defense? Yes or no?
Daniel, at this
Yes or
point,
no?
I
You
think
can.
this might
That's
be-
a very clear moral question to answer. Yes or
Unfortunately,
no?
I think it misrepresents the reality.
Yes or no? What? Yes or no? God forbid someone comes to harm,
No.
kill
Okay.
your loved
To
one.
be clear,
Can that person or you yourself murder or execute? It's not called murder. Execution of the attacker, of the murderer. Can you execute that person in self-defense? Of course, everyone agrees. You don't have to. You don't even have to answer.
You really
You
want-
not answering makes you look very bad.
No, it's a sign of me trying to be honest and think about the thing deep. Okay? It's me not just trying to create a knee-jerk reaction, which is what normally happens. Okay? And do you really believe what you just said? Because my understanding of self-defense. No, seriously, think about it. Self-defense to me is the use of minimum force. Someone attacks me. Once I've got them on the ground and I've disarmed them and I've got a gun on them.
So someone that killed your kids,
Let me hang on.
Let him finish his scenario.
Let me finish. The definition of self-defense to me is the use of proportional, reasonable force once I have got that particular individual, because violence happens at the level of the individual, okay? And I'm trying to get it down to the individual level for the empathy check. Once I've got that person incapacitated, to me, to then execute them is disproportionate. To you seem to be rationalising it on the basis of self-defence. I don't think that falls within the mandate as collective state self-defence and the chain of cause and effect and injustice. I see where you're coming from, but at the individual level of ethics, which is where God will judge us individually. If I individually have got a 19-year-old kid on the ground who wanted to go to a rave, even if they're misguided at 19, because they might be, even if they've really got a bad mindset,
It's conscription,
once they're
idea of
down and
conscription.
out, and also, well, it's going to come to conscription. Conscription, you don't get to choose. I'm going to judge people on their choices. If you've got
No, there is no
conscripted-
choice.
Okay, well, I feel sorry for anybody who doesn't have a choice. If you're conscripted into an army, even more reason to think, sorry, you don't have a
But
choice.
there are- you
So
can-
if I've got that kid on the ground, I think I've successfully defended myself to the point where I don't now need to execute.
So let's apply this
that reasonable?
scenario, this very reasonable
Thank you.
scenario that you have laid out for us. Let's apply it to the actual situation in Palestine and Israel.
Sure.
When the Palestinians are able to have control and they have subdued the Israeli occupation,
Yeah.
and the Palestinians are in control where they're no longer being ethnically cleansed, okay, a situation that we have not seen in 75 years, then the Palestinians, I'm sure, will exercise exactly the proportionality that you're describing. They're not going to ethnically cleanse Israelis, but they're going to right the wrongs when they have control. Right now, they don't have control. They're the victims of an occupation. They're being literally genocided. So the scenario that you have given us is not applicable to the actual ground reality. Do you not acknowledge that?
No, I do. Here's what I find
So the
interesting.
Palestinians have not been in control in order to, they are fighting for their lives. They're fighting, and within any kind of war of self-defense, there will be collateral damage. Everyone acknowledges that. But the level of death and destruction that Israel has put on the necks of the Gazans and killed so many children, so much infrastructure has been wiped out. And you have these Israeli politicians and rabbis who are going on camera and saying that we need to finish them. We need to make them history. Okay, these are the clear statements.
Sorry,
So, at what point have the Palestinians been in a position where, in your scenario, they're standing over their attacker and then they are exercising proportionality? They've never been in that situation. They've never been in that.
Can I backtrack? Okay.
Go ahead,
To
backtrack.
be clear, any Zionist or Jewish person who's saying we need to end them, I stand totally against.
Yes,
Okay, can I be clear?
you're very clear. You've been clear on that.
Thank you. Let me quote Sam Harris, because we all know how you guys like Sam Harris. I happen to be
And we know how much he likes us.
Okay, I happen to be a fan of people of good intent, and I think Sam Harris is a man of good intent. Not that I agree
Why?
with everything
He
Look,
said he
I
wants to
don't-
nuke
I just-
Mecca.
I just want
He said he wants to use
then
nuclear weapons against Muslims.
If he said that, I totally disagree.
It was in his book. It was
Okay.
in his 2004 book.
Okay, I've read it. Which one? The Moral Landscape?
Yeah, he says
I've
that
read it.
in order to teach Muslims a
I
lesson.
could pull the book out the bag
Please.
and we could find it, but let's...
Please, no, we can
No,
Google
you
it
know-
right
no,
now.
you know what?
No, he's
Okay, let's do
infamous.
it at the
He's
end.
infamous for this
You know what?
quote.
Let's do it at the end as a coda, okay? Let
Okay.
me try and get back to something Sam Harris said. Sam Harris points out, apparently there's a study where if you show a picture of one starving girl and you ask for a charity appeal, they get a certain amount of money. If you do the same thing and you go, here's her and her brother, you get less money. Okay, now this is an interesting observation on human psychology. So I don't care who it came from, Sam Harris or whoever, as a thing in and of itself, it's interesting. And what it seems to show is that the more we think about people collectively, the more we dehumanize them.
Sorry. Please, go ahead.
Okay. What I infer from that psychology experiment is that the more we treat people as masses and groups, the easier it is to sort of lose empathy, and think of them in an anonymous sense. And the more we focus on them as individuals, the more empathy we get and the more accurately we see it. Now, your arguments, I think, are being phrased in mass terms, and that's not. Just run with the idea. When you frame your arguments through a mass lens, I think you get the facts axis of the thing. I'm not saying you don't. I think there are facts.
So you should treat the Nazis as individuals, not as a group.
Let me finish. No.
Right?
No, reality. If you're willing to do humour, whatever, we agreed on the fact value axis. What you want to do is optimize and cross-reference the two to the best of your ability. Okay. So I don't want to be in denial of the facts. You've said some things that I'd be hard-pressed to deny are facts. But now I've got to work out how to evaluate them. And I think when you're evaluating the facts, do it at the level of the individual. Try to prioritize that over doing it at the level of the group. When you do it at the level of the group, you fall short of what I think is your fitra and your moral potential. So I don't mind if you want to phrase it collectively as the Israelis do this and the Palestinians do that. And there are facts in there, no question. But I'd like to see you simultaneously then trying to evaluate to the maximum concentration on each particular individual, giving benefit of doubt on both sides with equanimity. I'm just saying it is complex when you look at it at the individual level, but it is so cathartically easy when you look at it at the collective level, and we all want the simplicity of going, I'm right, you're wrong, my tribe, yours. That feels good. Short term, long term, it seems to give you increasingly bad payback. Like you
didn't ask me about an individual Israeli or an individual Palestinian and what is the solution for that individual. You asked me what is the solution in the Middle East.
I thought I'd put an individual 19-year-old on the ground and an individual you with a gun above them and ask them what you think would be a proportional response.
The individual 19-year-old, okay, once he is subdued, he can be taken as a prisoner of war. And this is what the Palestinians did. They took many prisoners of war, and these are being labeled as hostages. So would you think that that's proportionate? Once the 19-year-old is on the ground, and he's taken by the Palestinians as a hostage to use as leverage against the Israelis to prevent hospitals and refugee camps from being bombed, would you agree that that is a proportionate response to take those hostages, or those prisoners of war, rather?
Do you know how much trouble I'm in with my partner?
I
can see that somebody because then I'm going to bring it back to the question I actually asked you rather than the one you answered.
No, I answered it.
But no, actually didn't. It wasn't the question.
The 19-year-old. I answered the 19-year-old on the ground.
I'm going to do the courtesy of asking your question first.
Okay.
Probably ending a 30-year relationship. Okay. Then I'm going to re-ask you the question.
Maybe you'll find better. Maybe you'll find better, Tony.
Let's not even go. I can see that you could conceivably make a cogent argument for what you just proposed. However, the question I asked you was, if there's an individual 19-year-old on the ground, and you don't know what their motive is, they may be rampant Zionists, or they might not be, or even at 19, maybe you can be misguided if you're brought up in a culture that makes you think a particular thing, etc., etc., Allah the Merciful, God the Merciful, and you've got a gun. You personally, and that was my question, would you personally consider it proportionate to execute it?
Yeah, if it's a combatant, yes.
I'm saying it's a non-combatant. If it's an unarmed, even if it's an armed, if it's a person, even if
it's a child, no.
No, I gave you a 19-year-old.
19-year-old, okay. If it's a male 19-year-old, they are part of Israel's war machine. That is, the laws of war internationally acknowledge that someone who is part of the army or conscription or in the reserves, that is a legitimate target.
Okay, but once they've surrendered, I think the Geneva Convention, and you don't have to sign up to that, but it strikes me as quite a good idea. I think the Geneva Convention would argue, ethically and correctly, that once you've incapacitated your enemy, no matter how bad they are, at that point you don't then drive the point home by executing them if they're choosing to surrender. And I would hope,
surrender.
Okay, now if we're agreeing in the idea that we need international law for everybody with equanimity, Palestinians, Israelis, everybody, it's a noble aspiration. I think the Geneva Convention should be included in that, and I would hope that I would definitely not choose to kill that person. Okay? It sounds like if you're undecided, that's a good answer for me. I don't need a yes, no. Are you in any moral doubt at all as to whether or not you should pull the trigger?
No, we're asking a much simpler question.
No, I'm asking this question. And because I've now ended my relationship with my partner, just to keep this going, because I'm surprised how constructive it is, could you address the actual question I asked?
Yeah, so
would you? I'm not asking yes, no. I'm asking on an ethical scale. How do you feel? Is it possible that you're not sure?
No, with it, I want to answer on a principled basis.
Okay.
So I have to answer on the principle of Islamic law and what Islam actually allows. And what Islam's rules of law are is that when there is someone who is of age, so it doesn't even have to be 19 years old. It can be any kind of someone who's a teenager who has reached the age of puberty. That male, as long as it's a male, can be targeted within war. If they surrender, then it's up to the emir, it's up to the caliph or the general to decide whether to take prisoners of war, as slaves, for example, or as prisoners to be ransomed. That is up to the emir to decide that. But
what ethical ruling from an emir would you personally say was optimum in that situation?
Well, it depends on the situation on the ground.
This specific situation,
yes,
with a specific 19-year-old and you.
Yes, because there might not be an opportunity to take a prisoner of war. And then you run the risk of that 19-year-old going back and joining the ranks and fighting back and killing many of your women and children. So this is standard laws of war, not just in Islam. In every religion has the same standards, except Jewish laws actually go much further in licensing the killing of women and children as well. So I talked about Islamic law. I gave you a very principled answer. So acknowledge that this is something found in many other religions that go much farther in justifying the killing of women and children. Within Jewish law, based on the Talmud and the Torah and the Bible, they actually sanction the killing of women and children. And that's why they feel justified in carpet bombing Gaza.
Which I'm against.
For years.
Which I'm against, clearly. I'm not morally
so you're against?
I'm not morally confused on behalf of one team or the other. I'm asking a specific question about, I think the Geneva Convention gives a good ethical guideline once somebody has surrendered. I don't
agree that's a good ethical guideline.
Okay, fine. That's
because the 19-year-old that is, you cannot take as a prisoner of war and you cannot execute, you just let go, potentially could come back and kill women and children so that's not a good ethical standard of war.
So you're deciding to not give the benefit of the doubt to the possibility they won't be that person to come back and do it.
There is no benefit of doubt when they've engaged in combat against you.
Well, they went to a raid.
What's the difference? Okay. Yeah, in occupied territory, at a military outpost, that's not an ethically neutral action. I think you'd agree with that, Tony.
I don't think it's ethically neutral, but I
Thank you.
No, I don't think it's ethically neutral, but I do think there is proportionality, and I do think when someone has surrendered, I would abide by the Geneva Convention.
So when you have proportionality, when you mention the word proportionality, or Piers Morgan mentions the word proportionality, what is the equation that we're looking at? Because the equation doesn't start on October 7th. The equation starts in 1945, and we have to look at balance the equation by taking the entire history into account. The people that were in 1945 alive and displaced, they're still alive.
I don't want to argue.
They're still living.
Then
we agree. Then when you mention proportionality, have that equation in mind, not a constrained, limited political definition from Zionists, right?
Look, hang on. I'll go back to what I said about Hamas, which you won't like. Hamas to me a mad dog. Okay?
Yeah, why?
Wait. Hang on. This is why it's
compared to the IDF, why? How?
I'm not comparing with the IDF for a minute.
So if they're mad dogs, then how bad are IDF?
I'm giving you my personal horrible prejudices as a terrible human being. To me, the Hamas people who came over and killed them are mad dogs. I take that they've crossed the line. I would have defended those people. However, I'm not oblivious enough of reality to notice that they didn't get born mad dogs. okay? There are a series of historical facts which contributed to them becoming that. And anyone who stands back, if you kick a dog long enough, don't be amazed if it goes mad. Okay?
These are very prejudiced language, Tony.
Yes. Hang on.
Don't call Palestinians dogs and kicking them.
Okay.
You didn't mean it. You didn't mean it.
I forgot. Dog has a mad. Can we pick a different animal? What's
Yeah, but then what's even? Then what is worse? Then what is worse? Then when you have people who aren't being kicked, they've stolen all of this land, and yet they're still so bloodthirsty that they literally celebrate the bombing of women and children, the bombing of hospitals. Are you seeing social media? How these Zionists are celebrating the deaths
I'm
of
not backing them.
2-year-olds, infants.
I'm against them.
Then why, you're not calling them dogs?
You're not calling them dogs, you're calling Hamas dogs.
Hang on. No, because
That's the problem. But you said that you're prejudiced.
You
said, we need to talk about your prejudice, Tony.
Okay, we do.
This is a problem.
When I said mad dog, I was trying to see to the fact the Palestinians have had the bad deal. Okay? In other words, if you treat something badly long enough, eventually it will go kind of crazy.
It sounds like you're justifying terrorism.
Well, no, I'm trying to contextualize what I think those people did. So although I think they're murderers and I'm against them, I'm not oblivious to the fact that they got there by constantly being potentially being on the receiving end of consistently bad treatment internationally and injustice and simmering anger over 75 years, etc., to the point when a lot of people, even me, could have turned into that kind of person. So it's not that I can't understand that narrative.
So you could have been Hamas.
I don't think I'm perfect enough, and I'm not naive.
You're not perfect enough to be Hamas. Wow.
No, I'm not.
That's quite a compliment to Hamas.
I'm not perfect enough. I'm not perfect enough to think that I might not be on things far worse than I would want to concede to. Okay? I can understand how most appalling people get there. Usually it's by being consistently abused and hurt and frightened again and again and losing hope and losing purpose, and all you've got is a feeling of righteous justice.
How quote unquote bad that they are, the Palestinians are. How much worse are the Israelis who have done that to them?
Okay, that statement may be
You
true.
agree? You agree? It's that may be true. Make a strong statement, Tony.
No, I'm moving to the value.
They're
axis.
worse.
I'm moving from the fact axis to the value axis and going, even if your point is factually valid to a fair extent.
Okay, thank you. It's morally valid as well.
By framing, it's all about context. By framing it again in terms of who's worse, him or him, that tribe or that tribe. That very mode of discourse will inevitably end up being destructive. If you can frame your mode,
it will be restitutional to restore justice. That is what we're talking about, Tony. We have to talk about the moral axis in order to restore justice.
And I've heard again Mahorad Yojab saying, we don't agree in the killing of men, women or children, innocent combatants, not because it's because Islam prescribes it. I think I'm quoting it. He's saying Islam prescribes it.
Islam prescribes killing women and children.
You seem to be arguing that
and the elderly
doesn't count if it's not just a combatant, but a potential combatant, even if they're unarmed and they've surrendered. Okay? Now I think in that instance, you are behaving more draconianly than even by whatever the Israelis, even worse than the Israeli state is doing, even according to your own description of the Israeli state. I don't think the Israeli state is operating with that level of draconian malice.
It's much worse.
Really?
It's much worse. They're carpet bombing. They want to flatten Gaza. That's much worse than anything found in Islam.
I think that Sam Harris just pointed out.
Are you familiar with the passages within the Old Testament, or the Hebrew Bible rather, within Deuteronomy, Numbers, Samuel, that talk about destroying the Amalekites, the Canaanites? Are you familiar with the passages in the Talmud regarding war and war policy, that women and children are legitimate targets when they're the enemies of the Jews? Are you familiar with these passages? Yes. Yes or no?
I take the answer is broadly no, but I've got a blanket answer. I take it as read that all religions have got a fair amount of nonsense in them, okay?
No. This is, I gave the Islamic position. The Islamic position is morally defensible. This position from the Talmud is not morally defensible. I gave a moral defense of the Islamic principle of why an enemy combatant who is of age, who can pick up a gun and can kill women and children, even if he is surrendered, in certain cases, the emir or the general can decide to take as prisoner or to execute. This is a policy of warfare found in Islam. It's found in other religions. It is something that is very humane and very moral. I'm willing to morally defend it. I'm not willing to morally defend the killing of women, children, elders, and priests, rabbis. In Islam says that they cannot be killed under any circumstance.
Okay, which is what happened on
Which
Saturday
rabbis
the
were
7th.
killed?
Sorry, not rabbis. You listed some, but you know what you did. You listed some people, and a number of
Which
those.
children were killed?
Also,
This
I
is.
don't- when did this
You
craze
said
come?
that we're unsure about all of that, right?
You are unsure. Place your bets. What do you think? You listed
I did
women,
place my bet.
children, and old people. Okay. There seems to be a general agreement that at least 1,000 people were killed. I think any reasonable person would go. That included some of the people you mentioned: women, children, old people. And I'll add here because
I'll concede.
Thank you.
If they deliberately targeted, as opposed to collateral damage, if Hamas deliberately targeted children, for example, women is complicated because they are part of the IDF, they're combatants, but they targeted children. If they targeted, let me finish, targeted a rabbi, for example, or a priest deliberately, and that was the policy of Hamas, then that's condemnable because it violates Islamic law. There's no evidence that Hamas has that policy to violate Islamic law. If they did, the entire Muslim world would condemn that behavior. But these are just claims made by Israel in a way to manipulate the international audience. There's no evidence of these kinds of claims that Palestinians deliberately targeted children, deliberately targeted rabbis, deliberately targeted the elderly. So I condemn on the basis of Islamic law as well.
I've got a blanket axiom. I condemn anybody maliciously with malice of forethought using disproportionate violence on another person when they could have used lesser force. Period. I don't care who you are, what tribe you are, what time you are. Okay? I think most of the religious texts, I think Christianity, for example, I happen to be a particular fan of, although most Christians.
Wait, what kind of Christian are you?
The kind where virtually every other Christian thinks I'm not a Christian because I don't take any. I know you take this stuff very literally, and I'm more in the kind of Jordan Peterson camp where I know you don't agree with that.
Jordan Peterson is a Christian?
Where Jordan Peterson would go, this is about values and ethics and hierarchies, and it's more complex and it's not so literal, it's more mythological. Yeah? But I'm a big fan of that, so I think all religions are speaking of good core values, including Islam. I'm down here, I talk to the Muslims quite a lot. The 5 pillars, excellent. I think the practice is more important than the theory. The 5 pillars are strong. Nia is strong. Having Fitra, very strong moral compass. You find yourself aligning with Jordan Peterson and that. The world to me basically divides into people who think we're blank slates with no moral compass. And people
Do
who
you think
we do.
Tawheed is strong?
And you and I, and Jordan Peterson, and even Sam Harris, a whole load of people, we're all on the same team when it comes to, we think we have a moral compass. So before we tear each other apart, we should quickly celebrate that commonality.
No, because what is Sam Harris's moral compass? Sam Harris is openly saying that...
We both read his book and I've got it with me, and he gives a rational argument for how you can rationalise. I'd love to go there now, because I'd rather do ethics and metaphysics than do politics, okay? But given we're making hopefully some ground here, I condemn anybody who's killing disproportionately when somebody could surrender.
On that basis, you condemn the state of Israel.
No, we're back
You did, because we're applying your principle right now of proportionality to the creation of the state of Israel in 1945, where all these millions of Palestinians were displaced or ethnically cleansed. You agree with me 100%, Tony, that is unproportionate, it is wrong, it is condemnable. Say it, let it out, Tony, let it out.
Okay, let me read back what you said. If you don't add phrases like "you just agreed with me 100%," it would
You
be
do.
easier for me. No, I don't. I agree with you to some extent. Okay?
Focus on 1945, the creation of the state of Israel. You said that there could have been a better way to do
I
it.
believe so, because I'm always looking for the best. Okay, I'm always looking for the best.
You'll be accused of being an anti-Semite. You'll be accused of being.
From everybody's point of view, I'm Okay, no one can like me in this forum, okay? I'm always aiming for the best. We're not now in 45, 48. We need to learn the lessons of history. We need to state history accurately. Injustices were done. I can believe the Palestinians got the rough end of the deal. I'd ask anyone to ask themselves, you can choose to be born in a random body which is going to be Jewish or Palestinian after 1945, which is okay. And I think most sane people, if it was a random guys to go, I'll go for a Jewish body because I think they got the better deal. Yeah? I don't
No, why would you want to be born into the body of a terrorist?
I mean, try and run the experiment, okay? You know what I mean? I mean, the material circumstances.
Yeah.
I would choose, I think, clearly to be born into the body, I think, of an Israeli Jewish person, okay?
Yeah, settler. You want to be born into the body of the genocider, the occupier, the terrorist. Why? Where's the morality of that? Where's the morality? Tony, please. It's more fun when you're here.
Okay, it's more fun when I'm here. Okay, however, now ask yourself the same question. Would you rather be born in the body of a Palestinian or a Jewish person prior to 1945? And I would hope, if you're honest with yourself and objective, the answer to that is very clear. You would not want to be born in the body of a Jewish person. Okay?
When? Prior to 1945.
He's not saying it.
No, I am. I'm trying to look at it from multiple angles, which is what you should do. You shouldn't just. It's very easy to look at a thing from one angle and go, it looks this way. What you've got to do is look for the counter argument and steel man as best you can. That's going to make progress. So look for the counter argument to your position. Now, I think it is a reasonable postulate that Palestinians being born Palestinian after 45 will be a worse option than being born.
What's your point?
My point is try and emphasize from both directions and understand that you said it goes back to 45. In 45, you had a bunch of people who were
I empathize with plenty of Jews who have experienced the same kind of trials and tribulations of life that every human being goes through. Yeah, of course,
Thank you.
Christians, Jews, it's Buddhists, it's atheists. I do empathize with the human condition, of course. Okay? This is something that all Muslims have this position. But the question is, with this particular political disaster that has been created, with the creation of the state of Israel, what is the moral stance of this state? Is it an occupier? Is it an ethnic cleanser that is perpetuating genocide against an innocent people, the Palestinian people? We have to gain clarity on that moral question before we can discuss a solution.
I think you will gain more clarity by asking, has it been just? And the broad answer is probably no. Once you start chucking in the term of genocide,
not just
it's true though. It becomes
not just as mealy mouth.
Moving forward, the minute you chuck in terms like genocide, and you're on the
so the minute that we talk about the truth, then we can't progress.
No, I think we must always try and talk about the truth, but truth is about getting things into the correct proportions. It's not just a fact, it's about evaluating the fact as accurately as possible and constantly using loaded phrases, even if they were technically and factually accurate, constantly emphasizing ethnic cleansing genocide will exacerbate the situation worse than if you occasionally draw people's attention to the individual soldier on the ground and you holding an individual gun.
The people who are constantly...
Let me
sorry,
go ahead. When I asked the question about you with the gun, I could be wrong, but I think you slightly dodged the question by saying it would depend on what a higher person had decreed the rules of law. Okay, so let me rephrase my hypothetical. If the person was on the ground, the 19-year-old Israeli, and you've got the gun, and they want to surrender, and you have no idea what the mandate is from above, and now you've got to make your own ethical decision, and they would like to surrender, given all of your understanding of they may well be IDF, and they're part of a Zionist settlement, and all of that stuff, would you choose to kill them, or would you accept their surrender?
I would take them as prisoner of war.
Thank you.
All else being equal.
Thank you. Can I shake your hand?
But this is not what this. Zionists are not going to be happy with this answer because that's exactly what the Palestinians did. They took all of these prisoners of war. They're crying about it constantly on social media.
Look, nobody else may be particularly happy with that, but you don't understand how I put a number of hours into watching your stuff. Okay. And it's always nice when you have... This is a perfect example. I had such a strong feeling about you as being everything I think I've seen you say and do, I found pretty much despicable. Okay.
Well, maybe you didn't listen to me long enough.
No, actually, I think I did, unfortunately, but maybe you were in environments with other people who are arguing in a combative fashion, which produces a combative result. Now, do you know how nice it is when you're sure you're right about somebody and you discover they're not as bad as you thought? And if you can empathise with that and expand that feeling out to the wider network of Israelis and Palestinians, maybe, shock horror, not all of them are quite as bad as you think. Just spend, as Daniel Schmattenberger says, if everyone spends 10 minutes just trying to empathise.
Well,
Yeah?
I appreciate it, Tony. It was a pleasure speaking with you.
Yeah, it was actually a
really
pleasure
enjoyed it.
speaking
Thank
with
you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tony.
Right, that's a life-changing experience. Take
Okay,
care.
appreciate it.
Thank you. Good.